Traders, welcome back, and in today's masterclass we will be discussing how you can get out your own way as a trader. We're going to be discussing specifically mental biases and cognitive errors, in particular confirmation bias, which is one of the biggest mental bias or cognitive errors out there, and many traders don't understand it. Many traders are influenced by it without even knowing about it, and for 90% of traders who already have an edge and already have a trading plan, I can guarantee that confirmation bias is having an impact on your ability to have consistent profitability. So when we discuss trading psychology, when we discuss the human psyche in general, it's important to understand confirmation bias. It's important to understand mental biases and cognitive errors and what you can do as a trader to combat them. Now, we're going to be speaking more generally about cognitive errors and then more specifically about confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is, in a sense, the bias that is influencing all other biases. So if you understand confirmation bias, if you put things in place to manage and mitigate confirmation bias, you go a long way in uncovering, managing, and mitigating a lot of the other cognitive errors and cognitive biases that impact your trading. So from watching this particular lecture, implementing what I'm going to share in this particular masterclass, you're going to go a long way in mastering your trading mindset, and you're going to have a very high return on investment because we're going to implement a few practical things, and that's not only going to impact confirmation bias, but it's going to impact all the other biases. So without further ado, let's get into this particular masterclass, all about getting out of your own way and in particular, how you can get out of these mental biases that run and ruin your trading results. Now, the big problem we're addressing with mental biases in general is that traders are standing in their own way, and that's a very common challenge that we're going to address on this YouTube channel. Is how do you get out your own way? Because that's really what trading becomes all about once you have an edge. It's about how can I get out my own way and consistently execute on this edge so I can have consistent profitability. Now, most traders do not understand their mental biases, these cognitive errors, and well, in truth, they're not actual errors. They are very necessary feedback and survival mechanisms of the brain, but we can start to transcend some of those because, as we're going to discuss, some of them aren't necessarily needed all that much when we're sitting in a very safe environment on our computer in our apartment that's maybe air conditioned, which mine isn't right now, but these mental biases were designed to keep us alive thousands of years ago. A lot of them aren't all that necessary 95% of the time in our day-to-day life, especially when we're in a very safe environment. So we're going to discuss that. Now, a lot of traders are not aware of how these biases also affect their decision-making and profitability. And as a result, traders are making unprofitable decisions and killing their abilities to have consistent profitability. Now, there are a lot of traders out there who have a great system. They already have a great strategy. They've got a great trading plan, but they just don't know how to manage themselves. They don't know how to manage their psychology. They don't know how to understand, interpret, and manage their cognitive errors and biases. And as a result, they're never going to achieve consistent profitability. And they're never going to go off and be able to see the full capabilities of themselves as traders or their system, their strategy. They're never going to be able to scale and make significant income from their strategy or from their trading because they don't know how to manage themselves. And that's ultimately what this YouTube's about. It's what my 12-week program is about. It's what my whole Master Your Trading Mindset, education, and performance coaching business is about. Helping traders understand themselves on a deeper level, helping traders understand and manage the negative emotions that run their trading and their lives, and ultimately helping traders scale up. Because once you've put everything in place, once you manage your psychology, the scaling up becomes quite effortless. And there are so many opportunities to scale up nowadays that once you have a strategy, mastering your psychology and making that a priority is essential. Okay, now, let's understand mental biases on a little bit of a deeper level. Our mental bias or biases exist to keep us alive. They're there for survival, okay? Now, we need to filter information to maximize survival. If you think about it, thousands of years ago, there were certain situations where there was a lot of information and in that environment, and our ancestors had to filter that information very quickly to ensure that they were making the decision that was going to maximize their survival. For example, if they were in the bushes and they saw some berries over here, and then they saw some other berries over here, and then they saw a tiger right in front of them, and they were maybe in a cold environment, and there was a lot of other things going on. There were some birds behind them, and there was a nice sunset, and there was a lot of stimulus coming into their environment. In that moment, obviously seeing and recognizing the tiger in front of them is the biggest threat in that situation. So these biases are designed to not look at anything else, not look at the beautiful berries or the beautiful sunrise, or pay attention to how this nice cold breeze was keeping them nice and cool on a hot day. But this bias was there to ensure that ancestor saw the tiger and only the tiger and was highly aware of the tiger, because if they didn't filter all the other information out, you know what will happen next, okay? So they also needed to find meaning in certain situations. There's a lot of information going around. There's so much contradictory information going around. If we had all this information at the forefront of our mind, all this contradictory information, what do we believe? What do we buy into? So we need our mental biases in order to cut that out. I'm going to focus on this and find meaning and find patterns and make sense of all this information. It's essential for our survival. And we also needed to act fast. Again, if there was a tiger in front of us, we needed to cut out information. We needed to exaggerate how bad that situation was to get adrenaline up and not see anything else, but just see the negatives in that situation, get cortisol, adrenaline up, get the blood in our body from the internal organs to the extremities of our muscles. So we were in a state of fight or flight, and we could get out of there real quick. And the whole human body has been designed in a way over thousands of years to survive. And human nature never gets rid of old things, it only builds new layers on top of. So we have these same mechanisms firing in our brain, in our body nowadays. We have to understand the threats that our ancestors experienced thousands of years ago, they aren't always present nowadays. Chances are if we walk out onto the streets, there aren't going to be tigers there necessarily. Or 95% of the time, we're not in life-threatening situations. When we're sitting at our desk as a trader in an air-conditioned apartment, chances are, if we're using proper risk management, there are very little, there are very little threats in that moment. Therefore, a trader must learn how to manage and mitigate the very responses they're going to fire and are going to exaggerate our environment in front of us, because that's what we needed thousands of years ago for survival. We still have that, but we don't need it as much nowadays. So we need to learn how to manage it, quiet down if we want to go from a state of survival to a state of thrival. So those who are looking to thrive as traders need to learn how to manage and transcend the very biases that are designed for survival. They're not designed for thrival anymore. And there are many popular psychologists that have discussed this concept of we need to learn to transcend the lower stages of development. Maslow talked about his hierarchy of needs, and he talked about that a lot of the times nowadays for majority of people, and if you're watching this YouTube on an internet connection in an apartment or in a house, chances are you fall part of this camp where we've transcended a lot of the survival needs. We don't need to go hunting for food anymore, right? And we can start to transcend those lower needs for survival, and we can go to higher states of self-actualization, of thrival, of individual principles and learning to live congruently with what's most important, doing what we love, all those types of things. But you're not going to achieve that state unless you learn to transcend the mental biases. Okay, now the main bias, like I've discussed, is confirmation bias. And to put very simply, confirmation bias is the tendency to, once you commit to an idea or an expectation or a thought or a belief, once you commit to an idea, you tend to look for or find evidence that supports this idea, belief, expectation, and we tend to ignore that which disconfirms, runs counter to this idea. And this often happens unconsciously. Why? Because of that survival thing we talked about. Okay? So think about it in terms of your trading. If you're a trader that commits to an idea, an expectation, an outcome-based idea of euro-dollar is going to go to the downside, what's going to happen with confirmation bias, with your survival mechanisms firing? You're going to look for ideas, for reasons, for evidence to support why euro-dollar is going to go to the downside. And whenever the market presents an opportunity that runs counter to the idea that euro-dollar is going to go to the downside, you ignore it unconsciously. And this is where I talk a lot about the virtual market, the real market. The virtual market's the one in our head that's outcome-based, that's riddled with biases, and the real market is the real market where it's never wrong. You have to respect the real market, because if you're thinking and trading the virtual market but then putting risk on in the real market, you're going to get burnt because you're not present with the real market. So the whole job as a trader is learning to drop the bias, learning to drop the outcome-based thinking and decision-making, learning to get out of the virtual market, snap out of it, and get present with the real market. That's the goal as a trader, okay? I hope that makes sense. Now, I love this little graphic. Very few people are willing to let go of a reassuring lie for an inconvenient truth. Okay, it's very, very impactful if you think about it. Okay, now the problem specifically with confirmation bias and how this affects your trading. If it's not managed, this bias is going to block out important information, risks, cues that the market's trying to communicate to you about what the market's about to do next. If you get stuck up in this idea that euro-dollar is going to go to the downside, you significantly lower the probability of seeing when the market's trying to communicate that its idea is shifted, or its bias has shifted, or there are buyers kicking into the market and it's going to go to the upside. We're more likely to ignore those ideas and those cues and those risks. And as a result, we're more vulnerable as traders. And as a result, traders are more likely to be uninformed. We're less likely to have that information that's essential to make profitable process-based decisions, which means we're pushed more into outcome-based decisions, which means we're more likely to trade the virtual market in our head and trade based on what we think, as opposed to based on what we see in the real market. And I put a quote out on Twitter that said along the lines of, what's the point in keeping your eyes open if your mind isn't open? And truth be told, a lot of people are looking at the market and they're seeing the market, what's coming into their mind, or into their eyes rather, is what everybody else is seeing, but what's going into their mind is their own interpretation of that. And the reason why people skew what they see with their mind is because of their expectations, because of confirmation bias. Okay, and as a result, traders are making less profitable decisions and they're killing their ability to make consistent profitability, because consistent profitability comes from the consistent execution of your edge, right? But you can't consistently execute on your edge if you're constantly creating outcome-based ideas in the virtual market in your head and run by confirmation bias, blinded when you're trading the real market because you're trading based on what you think, not based on what you see, and not based on what your plan is advising you to do. Now, the problem, how else does this, or rather when does this affect your trading? When does confirmation bias affect your trading? And what a lot of people think is that confirmation bias just affects them when they're taking a trade, when they're about to enter a trade. But truth be told, it can happen at any stage of your trading workflow. It can happen when you're placing an order. It can happen when you're trailing to break even. It can happen when you're managing a position. It can happen when you're closing your position for a win or a loss. Take profit or stop loss. So confirmation bias can be present at every single decision you make as a trader in the workflow of entering to exiting a trade. And as a result, everything I'm going to share with you in this lecture is going to be relevant to every single part of your trading decisions. So what you may come to the conclusion of is, I'm actually quite good at placing an order and executing without bias and executing according to my trading plan. But I'm not consistently profitable yet because I don't know how to do that to my management. And my management's a little bit wonky. And I get into great positions and the position runs, but I give all that profit back. Or I cut my trades too soon. Okay? Or you may think that you're great at management and you absolutely suck at placing orders. okay? Whatever part, the whole point is these principles are relevant to each stage of the workflow. The workflow is the trader, going into a trade, getting out from a trade. And I'm giving you universal principles so they can be applied at any stage. I just want you to be aware that these principles can be applied at every stage, and they should be applied at every stage. Now, the truth of the market. Nobody knows what's going to happen next, and nobody needs to know what's going to happen next. Therefore, learning to be present with the market is key. Staying out of the virtual market, which is full of outcome-based thinking and which is riddled by bias, is the way to being present with the real market. When you implement what I'm going to share in this lecture, when you implement what I share in the 12-week program, you learn to get out of the outcome-based thinking in the virtual market in your head, which is riddled by bias, which is what's killing your consistency, and you learn to be present with the real market. And you learn to consistently execute in the real market based on your edge, which is where consistent profitability comes in. So executing when the market truly presents an opportunity that aligns with your trading plan is the key. But you can't do that if you're stuck with these biases and you're in outcome-based thinking in the virtual market. Okay? So what can you do about it? Well, there are 3 solutions. Step number 1 is make sure you have a true edge that's clearly outlined in the trading plan. Okay? That's step number 1. Why? Because if you're coming to the market every single time and you're not executing consistently according to an edge, you're not trading, you're gambling. You're coming to the market, you're trading based on how you feel. Maybe you had a really great day, maybe you had a coffee before you traded and you feel really great. You feel really risk friendly, and you can take a lot of risk that day because maybe someone you like texted you, or you had a coffee, or you made a new friend, or whatever it may be. You got a promotion at work and you feel really good. And in that moment, guess what? You're going to be able to you have a higher tolerance of risk. So maybe you're going to take a trade that's really crappy and low probability because you think you know what's going to happen next, because you feel invincible in that moment. No. That's all gambling. Don't even bother doing that, because guess what? You come back to the market without a trading plan, you feel really crap that day, and chances are that's the next day, right? You oscillate and you feel really risk off in that moment, risk averse, and you are not taking a trade that you would usually trade. So the whole point is to bring consistency to your trading, consistency to your execution, consistency to the way you feel as a trader, and that's going to increase the probability of being consistently profitable. The way you do that from a practical standpoint, in terms of your technical strategy, is have a true edge that's clearly laid out in a trading plan. Make sure it's mechanical, make sure it has checklists and simple rules, and this ensures you adhere to your edge. Right? So you can go to the market and go bam, 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 tick the checklist, each of the checklists, I enter in the market if the market's presented an opportunity. Or a couple of these variables aren't present in the market, the market hasn't presented a true opportunity, I'm not going to trade. That's the benefit of having a mechanical trading plan. You know when it's wise to be in the market versus not being in the market. And you know when it's wise to stay out of the market versus being in the market, because your rules tell you when. Step number 2. Distinguish between outcome-based virtual market thinking and decision-making and process-based real market thinking and decision-making. Stay out of the virtual market in your head, stay present with the real market. If you're truly present with the real market, there's no bias. There's no confirmation bias. There's just a communication with the real market, and you're listening to what the real market is communicating to you. But think about this just logically. If you're having a conversation with someone and you have an agenda, or you have something you want to say, or you have a way you want to push that conversation, then what tends to happen is we tend to hear what we want to hear as opposed to what that person's communicating to us. It's the same with the market. If we have an agenda, if we have an expectation, if we have a belief, if we have a bias of which way we think the market's going to go, we tend to hear or see what we want to see as opposed to what is actually out there. So when you're truly present with the market, the way you get there is by not having expectations and grounding those expectations, which is what I've designed the Bulletproof Your Mindset tool to do. It's completely free, link in the description. Go and download that and start using it before every trade you take. that tool is going to help you build up self-awareness of what type of decision you're making. Am I making an outcome-based decision based on bias, based on the virtual market, the expectations I'm projecting? Or am I making a process-based decision because I'm listening to the market and the market's presented an opportunity, my trading plan says to act? Guess what? One of those yields consistent profitability, one of those yields consistent in profitability. Now, step number 3, your expectations and your biases are created by subconsciously stored data. If you have a lot of pleasure over winning in the past in your trading and in your general life, and you have a lot of pain over losing in your trading and in your general life, winning and losing, then what's going to happen is that subconsciously stored pleasure and pain is going to drive expectations as a trader. You're going to want to seek after the pleasure of the past, the positive winning in your perception, and you're going to want to try and avoid the pain of losing in the past, the negative resentment of the past, and that's going to drive an expectation to be in outcome-based thinking of wanting to seek after that pleasure, like an animal trying to seek after it. And that's going to, again, kill your ability to listen to the market, the real market. It's going to riddle you with bias because now you do everything to confirm why this is a good, pleasurable trade, and it takes you away from your trading plan. So that subconsciously stored data is the root cause of the unrealistic expectations and a lot of the bias. That's what's driving a lot of the bias. The more and more of that stuff you have in your mind that you've left unaddressed, the more and more you're going to have bias, and the more and more you're going to make unprofitable, outcome-based, virtual market decisions as a trader. It's going to take away from your trading plan. It's going to take you away from consistent profitability. Therefore, addressing that data, the baggage, is a crucial step in ensuring a trader is able to manage the bias and transcend it. Now, this is where I put the Transcending Judgment tool in the 12-week program. This is where I share step-by-step what exactly needs to be done to address the baggage. And what I encourage traders to do is to do that after every single trade they take. And after you take every trade, you do that tool, the Transcending Judgment tool. And before every trade you take, you use the Bulletproof Your Mindset tool. So you're managing expectations, and after trades, you're managing the pride and shame, the fear and greed dynamics. And that's going to put you in the most balanced state, the most consistent state to come to the market, feeling balanced, feeling poised, feeling present, to execute according to your trading plan. And that's in the 12-week program, free trial, 7-day trial. Check that out, link in the description. Okay, so hopefully you learned one or two things from this masterclass. Understand bias. It's an interesting thing, and the truth is you don't know what you don't know. A lot of this stuff is quiet. A lot of this stuff is unconscious. Therefore, these tools, my education, my one-on-one help that I give you in the 12-week program, the accountability, it's all essential in helping you transcend a lot of the stuff that keeps traders inconsistent. Okay, so check that out. If the spirit moves you, 7-day free trial. Now, I also have a free newsletter. There's a lot of tools. You got the Bulletproof Your Mindset tool, you got the 12-week program. I've also got a free newsletter where I'm pushing out value every day, every second day on my email list. It's completely free. There's a link in the description to sign up for that. And you're going to get actionable insights and tools to be able to continue to master your trading mindset. And there's going to be, really impactful, short, sharp, impactful things. So when you're on your way to work, or your way back from work, or you're in an Uber, or you're sitting and watching TV, you can just quickly go through that newsletter and get some new ideas on how you can actually empower your trading mindset and take that to the next level. It's completely free. Link in the description again. Go and sign up for that. All I need is your first name and email, and I will fire out those emails every day, every second day. There's going to be a lot of value in that. Okay, but I hope you found this useful. If you did, please like, comment, subscribe, share these with your friends, share them in your trading communities. Let's get this value out there. A lot of traders have good strategies, but they're throwing that edge away because they don't know how to manage themselves. This whole channel is about helping traders master their trading mindset so they can achieve consistent profitability. Okay, I look forward to seeing you all in the next video. Cheers.